Who would like to ask the first question?
The panelists have taken their leave now, and then it's time for a question and answer session to be addressed by the keynote speakers, the gentleman who delivered the lecture, the former Irish Prime Minister, Mr. John Bruton, and the former British Foreign Secretary, Mr. Jack Straw.
Your question and your name and go straight to your question.
I am at TV Sunday. I want to ask our speakers. They have given their keynote addresses, and we want to know the way out of this corruption. What are the way out? Knowing that in Nigeria, there is injustice and there is all sorts of things, whereby those in the hierarchy level can do a particular thing and they will go scot-free. What are the way out of implementing to make sure that they pay for these actions?
Thank you. We'll take 3 questions and then give a chance to the panel. Gentleman in the second row.
Thank you so much. My name is Walton Bombs. I'm a lawyer. Of course, it should be expected that issues of corruption will agit us all in this hall because some say it's our culture. I've listened to all the speakers, and if you permit me just a moment, I will tell you something that I remember each time I hear arguments on an issue. In a proceeding in a court, the lawyer addressed the judge. Hope it wasn't caused by corruption, please. In the proceedings in a court of law, a lawyer addressed the judge seriously, and when he finished, the judge said, "Counsel, you have a point here." I now turn to the defense counsel. What's your submission? The defense counsel made equally serious, copious submissions, and the judge said, "Counsel, you have a point here too." The judge retired to chambers to consider his ruling. His clerk came. "My lord, Counsel Jack Straw spoke. He said he has a point. Counsel, the other lawyer spoke. He said he has a point. How will you give judgment?" He said, "You two, you have a point there." Each time I listen to audience like this, that's what I always, you go this way, you go that way. But I have a question, sir. I've always heard us talk about strong institutions. Strong institutions. When the American president came to where strong institutions, so we don't need strong men. I ask, can weak men build strong institutions? That's my first question. Can weak men build strong institutions? And for whatever reason, when a weak man finds himself in a strong institution, won't he infect that institution with his weakness? Then I also keep wondering, I've been in audiences on corruption. And I asked this question to my audience in Cambridge last year when we were discussing corruption. And I ask you now, sir, are there no prosperous, corrupt countries? That's my question. Are there no prosperous, corrupt countries? If there are, how come our own corruption is the result we are poor? It seems to me that something else is the reason we are poor, not just corruption. Thank you, sir.
And one more question, please. There's a gentleman in the second row on this side.
Thank you, sir. Mine is, much has been said about the need to strengthen the election process, the rule of law. My name is Goodlive McKinney. I'm a special advisor to the governor. Much has been said about the need to strengthen the electoral process, rule of law, building a strong institution, corruption and transparency. But it's not much has been said about the role of the citizens in those developing countries. How did the citizens participate to ensure that their countries become stronger in democracy? Thank you.
The first question was there a way out for corruption? The way out of corruption is actually very simple, but getting there may be very difficult. It's very simple. If you want to deal with corruption, then you prosecute and jail the people who are corrupt, and you confiscate their assets. There are laws across the world which are laid down to do this, but it's simple. It's been invented in its own operation elsewhere. The question is, can you do it? And that then comes to the second question about strong institutions. Opposition is an institution. If you get a strong opposition, then you will start to move towards eliminating systemic corruption. There are a few countries I can think of where you've got that real dynamic, which one of the panel talked about, between opposites, and a well-functioning opposition, which are also badly corrupt. And building these institutions is very important. Now, the second question asked, can weak men produce strong institutions? Well, sir, there are weak men and women and strong men and women in every society. There are millions of strong men and women in Nigeria. The interesting thing, the fascinating thing about institutions is that if you can build them, then their norms and rules transcend the individuals. So, for example, in the UK, and it used not to be like this, but it is now, the idea of any one judge being corrupt is completely unthinkable. They simply don't do that. They may sometimes be prejudiced, they may be bad-tempered, but they're not corrupt. An institution has been built up. There are plenty of other institutions like that. But I mean, crucially, if you want to eliminate corruption and ensure a strong rule of law, you've got to have a clean judiciary and you've got to have clean prosecutors. That gentleman also asked whether there are any prosperous corrupt countries which are also corrupt. Yes, there are countries where the aggregate wealth is quite high, which are also corrupt. China was mentioned earlier. China has many very serious problems of corruption. There are some southern European countries which have quite a level of corruption. But those countries are also countries which are unequal and where their democracy is not properly operating. The last question was about strengthening the electoral process, and is there a role for citizens in developing that? Yes, there is, but you've got to make the electoral process clean before citizens think there is a purpose for them using their vote and other democratic rights.
Thanks very much. In regard to the first question, I agree with what Jack said. I would add that one of the important things to have in a country is a good system of complaints about the police service, that you have a body to whom people can appeal if they feel they've been badly treated by the police, because the police are the first line of defense of society against all form of crime, including the crime of corruption. I think the question, can weak men build strong institutions? I think the answer is yes. In fact, very often weak people, because they're weak, will have to think a bit more about what needs to be done to protect themselves and others against corruption, whereas very strong people probably don't need institutions as much and feel they can look after themselves on their own. I think, in fact, of course, everybody really is weak at the end of the day. I would agree very much with the questioner who said that the role of citizens had not been adequately stressed in our discussion. Jack did have a quotation from President Roosevelt where he pointed out that the ultimate guarantors of any democracy are the citizens, and I think that needs to be underlined. I'm worried a little bit about what's happening in modern society in the sense that people are increasingly retreating into private life. People are less willing to get involved than they were in the past in political parties, certainly in Western Europe. People are becoming much more narrow in their interests, partly because of the excessive specialization that's possible thanks to the web. People can come to be obsessing about one subject and maybe never watching the daily news and not even knowing what's going on in the country more generally. And in that sort of atmosphere, I think corruption can thrive. I think it's also important to understand that there isn't necessarily an accepted definition of what constitutes corruption. Everybody would agree that if you do something with public funds to benefit somebody who gives you some money in return, that's corrupt. But is it corrupt if you're a member of Parliament and you have the option of moving some activity into your constituency rather than to a neighbouring constituency, which has just as good a claim or may even have a slightly better claim to that activity than your constituency? And you're doing that not in return for money, but because you want to get re-elected at the next election. Is that corrupt? I think we need to, define what is corrupt in a way that everybody understands and accepts. And obviously you need to have degrees of penalty for the severity of the offence. Thank you.